AMU. If you do a bit of Googling, you'll find some deck lists from about 15 years ago. Azelf, Mespirit, and Uxie all had pretty strong cards and even formed their own deck named AMU for short. Throughout the years, we've seen Pokemon continue to release the Lake Guardians with the spirit of AMU in mind, designing around the idea of having all three of them in play together. Although, since then, not to too much fanfare. Surging Sparks is the latest set to include the Lake Guardians together, and once again they've kept the AMU theme in mind. This time the Pokemon are a little stronger than previously, and so I set to work testing and investigating different ideas, which I want to take you through before we talk about the approach that I've had the most success with. First of all, let's take a quick look at these three. They've each got 70 HP. They're all basic Pokemon with a little bit of synergy between them. Uxie's Painful Memories puts 2 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon for 1 Psychic Energy. This is deceptively strong as it can't be blocked by Manaphy or stopped by the Terra Pokemon effect. Azelf plays off this damage counter build-up with its Neurokinesis attack, dealing 10 plus 10 more damage for each damage counter on their side of the board. Mespirit, well, it's not too useful, but it can do 160 damage for 2 Psychic Energy, but requires Azelf and Uxie in play. Version 1 of the deck was an idea inspired by a list shared by one of our Twitch viewers. It's a poison package using Brute Bonnet, Pecharunt, and Sneasler to apply poison while you spread damage with Uxie. My version of it here looks to use Xatu as both an energy accelerator and draw engine as well. Ultimately though, trying to squash these ideas together with Xatu being the glue to hold it all together wasn't too successful. My second build removed the poison Pokemon in favor of consistency. While it was starting to look a bit more convincing in its consistency, it was lacking the extra punch that the poison provided. The idea behind Munkidori here was that I'd ideally be able to fend off opposing Munkidori and damage spread from Dragapult as well, which are both quite irritating to play into. A third idea here departs from Xatu and includes a Dudunsparce draw engine instead. While it's curiously different, it is still pretty similar to the second build with the lack of extra punch, despite Radiant Charizard being included. So, eventually, I arrived at the same conclusion many others had as we journeyed through the ideas. Froslass was the ideal partner to include. None of our attackers are impacted by Froslass, and Munkidori's presence in the list is a lot more sensible too. The damage ramp up is pretty significant, and it means that Azelf's Neurokinesis will start swinging for big damage quickly. Mespirit's inclusion in the deck is questionable at best. Currently, my thought here is that it might help in matchups where an opponent declines to bench very many Pokemon, but the 2 energy requirement is pretty tricky to work with. A tool which has really opened a lot of possibilities for the deck is the newly reprinted Counter Gain, which gives us a discount on colorless energy in attack costs when you're behind on prizes. Playing from behind is naturally what happens with this deck due to wanting to spread damage counters with Uxie. Mainly, Counter Gain is used with Azelf, but you could also use it with Munkidori in a pinch. But remember that Munkidori needs Psychic Energy for Mind Bend. That Dark Energy won't cut it. Survival Brace is the ace spec of choice here, and it has a lot of obvious and more subtle qualities to it. On the one hand, it's clear that denying a prize and buying a turn can be pretty strong. That's another round of Uxie damage and several more rounds of Froslass damage if they have no choice but to attack into the brace. The subtlety of the card comes from how your opponent might choose to deal with it. I'm happy if the opponent is ever using Boss's Orders to go around the Survival Brace instead. This means your energy attachment is usually safe on whatever you attached it to, usually Uxie. And that means you can look to get ahead with an energy attachment down on Munkidori or perhaps even Mespirit when normally you'd have to attach to the next Uxie or an Azelf turn after turn. There's quite a few supporters here, and the main reason for that is that there's no Pokemon-based draw engine. You're going to have to rely on these supporters to see you through. Mime Jr. is pretty unusual, even in a deck filled with unusual cards. It's not immediately obvious why you would want to use it, as the opponent is usually able to play around mimed games by benching a Pokemon with a low damaging or useless attack. A common counter strategy to spread strategies is to bench very few or no Pokemon at all. And against a lone board with a single attacker, Mime Jr. gives us a way to use their solo Pokemon's potentially powerful attacks against them. It's rare, but pretty exciting when it happens. Now look, this list isn't perfect, it needs a little work. There's more cards I'd like to add, but as is always the dilemma with being a deck builder, I can only include 60 cards. The cards I'd be alright with removing are cards like Lana, Mespirit, EXP Share, and Mime Jr. You might want to look at cards like Ultra Ball, another Munkidori, or another Technical Machine Devolution. Pokegear, or even Gravity Gemstone might be good. Playing this deck takes a bit of getting used to, but it's pretty fun to see the game plan come together. You start by spreading damage with Uxie while setting up the board behind it with Froslass. Feel free to use Survival Brace anytime. Many times I'll use it as early as my very first turn in order to help me stabilize while trying to set up my board. As the damage counters build up, try and identify how you'd like to win. Whether it's by using Azelf for Counter Gain or by looking at Technical Machine Devolution, you could also potentially just win by overrunning your opponent with damage counter spam by using Uxie over and over. It's likely that some combination of all these approaches is what will give you the 6 prizes to win. This deck has a pretty hard time against other decks that can spread damage counters. Dragapult with Dusknoir and Regidrago are both pretty bad. I also think it's very difficult to win against Ancient Box, but it's also got perfectly fine matchups too, so I encourage you to give it a try. So look, there you have it. This take on AMU 15 years later is quite different and quite the departure from what it once was. But the spirit of the deck remains. For some sample gameplay of the deck, you can check out this video here. And if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, please consider liking the video. You could also subscribe if you're feeling generous, comment if you're feeling brave, and I'll see you in the next live stream or video. So take care and goodbye.